Opinions expressed on the following program are those of the program hosts, not necessarily WPSL or Port St. Lucie broadcasters. Any reproduction or reuse of this program without the written consent of WPSL is strictly prohibited. But you're encouraged to like and share it on Facebook because it's about what's happening. It's the Sue Ellen Sanders Show with Sue Ellen Sanders.
Welcome to the Sue Ellen Sanders Show. We're going to be talking about some children's assistance and kids activity and activity that benefits children as well in this hour. So thank you for joining us. We are going to begin the show by talking to Alexandria Delgado, and she is an RN BSN, which is a nurse and a nurse, two different kind of nursing degrees, correct?
It is a Bachelor's of Science in Nursing.
Okay. And she is also representing an organization called Advanced Care Pediatrics, PPEC. And I was lucky enough to meet Alex earlier this week when she talked to some of the child care providers over at the Early Learning Coalition. And what she was presenting was it's a really an organization that serves children throughout the Treasure Coast, but the children that it serves are some of them are very high needs.
Correct.
So
Most
let's
of
talk
our
about
children are ages from birth to the age of 21 who have medically fragile needs or are technologically dependent on services by nursing and therapy.
All right, so let's take that apart for just a minute. Medically fragile means some of them are very critically ill.
Correct. They require medication or nursing interventions throughout the day in order to sustain life.
Wow. You got to give the parents, the caregivers, the children a lot of how much must it take out of you to be a parent or a caregiver who is in a situation like that where your child's life is dependent on the nursing and pediatric care that they're receiving?
Well, for families, they go through a lot because, of course, as a mom or a father, you want to stay with your child throughout the day. But most of these parents have to work, so they have to leave them in the care of the nurses that we have. We have very qualified nurses. The nurses that we have more than 2 years' experience in pediatric nursing in order for us to hire them. So it does something to the families and reassures them that they are leaving them in the best qualified hands.
Let's talk for a minute about some of the types of medically fragile situations that you're discussing here, that are the things that.
So we have children that some of them have tracheostomies that require suctioning by nurses throughout the day in order to keep the airway open. We have children that have gastrostomy tubes that are fed through the tubes throughout the day in order to sustain their weight and their life function. And then we have children that have seizure disorder that could have a seizure at any time of the day, and we have to medicate them.
And they have to be watched.
And they have to be observed, and we have to assess them throughout the day and ensure that they're basically kept safe, when they're having a seizure, and administer the medication they need to stop the seizure throughout the day.
So when I say throughout the Treasure Coast, you're actually located in Southwest Port St. Lucie, but you have buses that run, and they go and pick up the children if they need to.
Correct. They go as far north as Vero Beach and as far south as Stewart. and the Port St. Lucie areas. We have 3 buses at this time who have qualified nurses and paramedics and EMTs escorting the children to and from home.
Do parents and caregivers also drop the kids off themselves? Are they able
Yes.
to do that?
Yes, we do have some families that live nearby and do drop the children off in the morning and pick them up in the evening.
Oh, how did you first identify the need for these specific types of services?
Well, Advanced Care Partners is a home care company out of Georgia that's currently servicing medically fragile children in the homes. And we identified the Port St. Lucie area as being an underserved area for PPAC services. So that's why the project took about 3 years to get this project started, and we had to go through licensing, credentialing, and all of that. So we opened last October, and due to the underserved population, we came into the area with hopes to assist families with their medically fragile children.
And you said that this is an underserved area, but there's patches that is available, but they have a waiting list at most times for kids to get in, correct?
Correct. I don't know much about patches, but I know that, we do have a large amount of medically fragile children in the area.
Why is that, do you think? Because it's an affordable area for people to live?
Most probably, I'm thinking that, there's a lot of reasons why children become ill or are born ill with chronic conditions.
So some of the conditions that the caregivers are dealing with are chronic conditions that they were born with and have their whole life. Are some of them also conditions that may be temporary?
Some could have a temporary condition, and they do achieve their medical goals. They achieve their medical goals, and they do move on, some children, to daycare and school, which is nice to see. But the more chronic conditions, such as kids born with syndromes that require nursing intervention and medication, those are the children that stay with us a little longer. And they normally don't transition out of the programs. They can transition maybe to home care nursing and have a one-on-one nurse.
All of this sounds very expensive and intensive as far as the services that you provide. I mean, you have to have, just on the bus alone, you have to have so much assistance when you're transporting the children to serve their needs if there's any type of critical issue. But already, I'm sure a parent with a child with a chronic condition is facing all sorts of high medical bills. So how does this fit in with the rest of the story, so to speak?
Well, most of our families receive Medicaid, and Medicaid does pay for the service. So when you look at the services provided by a PPAC program, it's less expensive as it is with home care nursing.
It is, and it's covered.
And it's
by
covered by Medicaid. So the services are a good service for children, and in comparison to cost, we're more cost effective than home nursing one-on-one.
When the kids get to the facility, what happens in the course of the day? Is it, I know you have different levels of critical need with the children, but is it any type of classroom type situation?
Yes. Well, for the more higher functioning children, we do have classroom activities and that's our toddler room. We start showing their colors, their numbers, their shapes. They play throughout the day with manipulative toys, puzzles. They do arts and craft activities, and those are the higher functioning children. The baby room, usually the babies play with toys, rattles. They listen to music throughout the day. It's soothing. They have many mats there, so they do their tummy time, the babies. We're constantly repositioning them, making sure that they're safe throughout the day, and that's the baby room. Now, the non mobile room, those children do have their activities. They work with the nurses throughout the day. The nurse repositions them, picks them up, takes them for walks. Therapy comes in and out of the room to do therapy interventions. We're lucky to have Grace Therapies providing our therapy for these children. So they do, each room has an activity unique to that room.
So, tell us some more about how the families find you and what the transition is between, when do you find the families or do they find you? I mean,
They normally find us. The process usually is that they go to their primary care doctor and tell the doctor, I need help, I need care for my child. A normal daycare won't take care of my child. And then the doctor formulates a prescription, which he faxes over to us. And then we schedule a tour for the family. The family comes in, and if they're in agreement, then we do a nurse assessment. And after that, we send all the paperwork over to EQ Health Solutions, who is a case management agency for Medicaid, and they approve or deny services.
the parents that come to you that need your services or caregivers, you mentioned before we started the show that some of them are a little bit in denial of the seriousness of the situation, or the fact that maybe their child is not going to get better, or the high needs that their child has. How do you address that?
It's a hard situation. I always refer the families back to the primary care doctor so the doctor could speak to them
Explain that
and
more.
explain, what's going on with their child. You know, you can never say a child's never going to walk because we don't know if that's true or not.
Right.
But the doctor
And it's not your job
exactly
to say that. Yeah.
So the doctor could give a more physiological explanation of what's going on with their child. A lot of these families do need a lot of support, and they do need to have more support groups in the community for these families.
Do you help connect them with any of those services? Do you have information about
I
that?
do have information. I'm still gathering information about the services that are in the area for these families.
And some of the conditions you said are chronic, and some of the children, they're not mobile at all, so they're dependent on having someone move them around if they're going to move from one thing to another.
Correct.
So previous to you coming into the area, what happened with these children?
Well, some of these children were even serviced in school. Other children were serviced at other centers. Some children were just home. And then parents started to learn about the resources in the area, and some parents contacted me, can I provide services to their children?
The age range is from birth to
21.
21. So do you have a lot of teenagers that are part
I
of the
do.
programming? You do.
I do.
And are their needs have got to be different than the younger children?
Yes, and they are, separated from the younger children. Their needs are different, and it all depends on their diagnosis.
You would think that a child, no matter the age, but especially an older child who understands a lot of what's happening to them and what's going on around them, might need some additional counseling. Do you connect them to mental health counseling too?
If they do need that, most of our children are pretty profound. and are nonverbal. So it's hard to connect them to counseling.
Yeah.
I connect more the families
Right.
to the right resources.
Well, let's talk about that then. So, when you say profound, you mean serious,
Yes.
intensely serious, and profound is more of the medical term
Mhm.
for it. So they don't communicate. Do you know that they can't communicate, or?
Well, some use sign language,
Mm-hmm.
and some therapy works with them on switch toys so that they can answer, like if they want to eat, they'll touch a switch and they're able to activate that switch that they want more. Those are the things that this is how these children express themselves.
And so your staff is trained to be able to handle those types of situations.
Correct. The nurses that we hire need to have experience either in the NICU, the PICU, pediatrics, or pediatric ER.
You mentioned the parents and the need for counseling for the parents. Tell me a little bit about that.
A lot of the mothers that I have encountered are single moms, and they're struggling. They're trying to keep a job, and they have a medically fragile child that they have to leave with us throughout the day. They worry about the children. They call us throughout the day. And we are basically, I see that they have a lot of needs because they come in and they vent to us and they tell us what's going on, and we listen. I don't see many support groups for these families. I see mental health groups,
Mm-hmm.
but I see that a lot of these families, a lot of the moms support each other. That they themselves have taken it upon themselves to make their own groups, and they encourage each other, whether it's on social media or they have gatherings amongst themselves and they talk about their issues.
What are some of the diseases that the children that are in your care are facing?
I can't go into the details of the diseases because of HIPAA,
Mm-hmm.
but I can tell you that some of them are born with cardiac anomalies. Some of them are born with being anoxic at birth, which is lack of oxygen, and they have a lot of seizures throughout the day. Some of these mothers were told that the children wouldn't live a week after birth, and they're here, many years later. And mom is, still holding on, and the child is thriving and doing well. Still dependent on all activities of daily living, but alive.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a miracle in itself.
And the parents that have dealt with a chronically ill child for a long time, that must take a toll on them.
Yes, it does.
And so they talk to you about it. They form their own groups. What are some of the needs that you see for them? What are some of your suggestions for what we could do as a community?
I think as a community, they definitely need to have more respite care, help for them, resources. When they are in the hospital with the child, and the child is in the hospital for about a week, and they are not able to work for that week, who covers their income for that week? Those are all the needs that these families have. Some of them don't have the right working vehicle. They need the right vehicle to transport their child back and forth to appointments. A lot of the hospitals that they have to go to are really far. Some of them have to go out to West Palm. Some have to go to Miami. Some have to go to Orlando. And they don't have the right vehicles. So those are all issues that these families go to.
Previous to you being in the area last October, what did these families do? Did they just caregiver. A lot of them, you said, are single moms. So did they just stay home with that child and they weren't able to work?
Yes, I've had a lot of mothers say I was just able to start a job because you're now taking care of my child, and I know that you guys are nurses and you're able to take care of them, and you're not going to call me 20 times a day, when they're having a seizure, to come and pick them up.
Mhm.
So, yes, we're able to help families transition back to work.
That must be um, a big confidence builder for some of the caregivers to be able to take a step back into a life of normalcy for at least a few hours of the day while they know that their kids are being taken care of at the highest extent. Um, if you if the child has needs that you cannot meet, if they're too critical for you, is that ever a situation?
Yes, there are children that I have encountered that are not good candidates to be in the PPAC area, that they should be in the home care with that one-to-one nurse. And that's a child that requires much more monitoring on a one-to-one level with the nurse as opposed to the PPAC center.
Does Medicaid cover that too? If
Yes, yes, they do.
so the parents, you have to help guide the parents in knowing what the child's needs are, what's the best interest of the child.
Correct.
When the parent comes to you, do you initially just tour them through and show them the services you offer?
Yes, I give them a tour of the whole facility and I introduce them to the staff, and I ask them questions about the child, and I just basically assess to see if they feel comfortable in the setting they're in. And I tell them, if this is something you want to do, let me know. If you need to think about it, I understand. And most of them tell me after the tour that they want to sign their children up with our service.
The communication or lack of communication between the children and the outside world must be very frustrating for them too. So for some of these kids who are getting to be in a more social situation for the first time in their life, it must be pretty exciting.
Yes. Although they're nonverbal, they do actually play with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's that they throw a ball back and forth at each other, or they're spinning something and another one sees the spinning and he wants to spin. So they do interact with each other, and it's amazing to see, although they're nonverbal.
Mm-hmm. But you do have some children that are not as serious, and you said you separate them out both by age and by the level of critical need.
Correct.
So, what are some of the higher level functioning students or children doing?
So those children are basically, they come in, they have their breakfast, and then they go into a school classroom, and they sit down and they learn their lessons on like numbers, colors. They do arts and crafts. They do dress up. They play with tablets. They basically sing songs they like. We do a lot of dancing with them. We encourage exercise there. So these are the higher functioning children.
Yeah.
And some are doing very well, that they're about to transition to school. And then we have some that are basically there because they require medication throughout the day, but they also are high functioning, but will be in the program because they require medication throughout the day.
It sounds like, for at least for the higher functioning students, the children that are part of the services, that this is a good step for them to take before they transition. So to go straight from home to a school setting might be difficult for them, but this is kind of more transitional for them and take it one step at a time.
Yes, absolutely.
Tell me about some of your success stories. I understand with HIPAA that you can't describe anyone by name or specific disease, but tell me about some of the successes that you've seen, the things that have made you feel really good about the services you provide.
What I've seen is that we've had a child that was admitted to us that didn't really take a lot of hydration throughout the day, and we've encouraged a lot of hydration with this child. And this child has had less seizures. She's gaining weight. She's thriving. This was a child that was left for a while, a long time throughout the day in the wheelchair. And we're getting her up, we're walking her. She's walking outside, and she looks amazing. So that's one of my success stories.
And that must make her parents feel really good when they come and they see the potential that she has.
Yes, absolutely. Even the doctors have noticed a difference in her. Um, when she started, she didn't allow you to touch her much or, just touch her hands. Now she allows you to touch her. She's looking around. She's more interested in the environment.
If a child has a condition where where there's a problem in being around other kids, then Medicaid will generally recommend that one-on-one care. Do you help the parents to connect with that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And what other services in the community are you able to do other people refer people to you other than just the pediatricians?
Yes, the specialists, sometimes even other mothers that know a mom who needs help, they'll refer a mom to our service.
So, some of them, are some of the parents are in a situation where they're not feeling very hopeful about either their child or themselves, and this is something that you can make a big difference with.
Absolutely.
So, what do you think the community can also do to help make a difference? What other types of agencies and help? You mentioned support groups, and that's a really good start as far as just sharing. Sometimes when you have severe issues and you feel like nobody else is dealing with those things but you, just sharing that and finding out from somebody else they're dealing with the same issues can really make a difference in your attitude. What are some of the other things that, as far as when you would think that the families that have a high need for this type of support services would also have a high need for other things like food and housing and clothing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think if I was to initiate a program like this, I think it should be a whole task force of people, the providers that provide the housing, the providers that provide food pantries. Doctors should be on this panel. People from mental health should be on this panel. That way, when you have a mother like this, you can point them into the right services with this task force. But it should be a task force consisting of a lot of people in the community.
So are you personally also new to the Treasure Coast? Did you move here as the company opened here, Advanced Care Pediatrics, which is a PPAC?
Correct.
Yeah.
I've lived in the Treasure Coast for the last 12 years, and I used to manage a PPAC program in Palm Beach on the St. Mary's campus. And then we moved to Okeechobee and Jog. So that was another PPAC program that I managed for 12 and a half years.
So you've been able to help connect to what's going on the Treasure Coast and things that will help and services that will help on the Treasure Coast. You personally, can people contact you if they want more information?
Absolutely.
Tell us, do you have the best ways to contact you? Through your website, through Facebook?
They can contact me through Facebook. We have a Facebook page. It's called Advanced Care Pediatrics PPAC. They could call the office, and that number is 772-408-9588, and I will be waiting for their call.
And you have a website that they could check out too?
Yes, we have Advanced Care Partners /PPAC, PPEC.
So, and one thing that you could also do is just look up Advanced Care Pediatrics, and probably in the Google search bar, it'll take you to the website. So, what does PPAC stand for?
It stands for Physician Prescribed Extended Care.
And that extended care is not necessarily extended throughout the day, although it is, but you're looking at extended care as compared to years instead of just short term. Do you ever have children that you're just dealing with short term?
Yes, we do have children that basically reach their medical goals and their rehab goals, and we can transition them either to daycares or schools.
But so some of them, we talked about the transition earlier, but some of them have conditions that are more temporary conditions. Could there also be things that create the conditions, like a disease that goes away, or a car accident or something
Correct.
of that nation?
We've had children, like let's say we have a child with an open fracture that has pins, and the mom has to work. We could provide the pin care, repositioning, give them medication, their pain medication, and then once that pinning goes away and they basically establish the child's leg again, then we're able to transition the child back to school.
So some type of fractures require pin placement in order to hold them in place for healing.
Correct.
So what's the shortest stay that children generally have there?
We have children that have been there they get approved in increments of 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So every 6 months we're redoing paperwork. But some children can come 2 months, 3 months. We are also servicing children that need high-tech infusions in the area.
What does that mean, high-tech infusions?
Well, basically these children need infusions in order to help their disease process. And some of these children have had to travel all the way to Miami to get infusions.
So infusions of blood or medicine, or
either blood, medicine, antibiotics, what are like blood products, what they call gamma globulins, some of the enzymes that children with syndromes have. We can administer those medications there.
Again, without breaking any laws, what kind of can you give us an idea of the types of different syndromes that children might face, the type of children that would come to a facility such as yours?
Well, I can honestly say we have children with Hunter's syndrome.
What is Hunter's syndrome?
It's basically a genetic disorder that they don't have enough GAG in their system, and they need a specialized enzyme to be given to them weekly. So those are the type of children that we see. We have children that have Crohn's disease, and we have to give them medication for Crohn's disease.
And Crohn's also is kind of incremental. Aren't there some people who live with Crohn's disease at home and over a lifetime without intervention?
Yes, but there are some that are more severe and that require medication. And there are some children that have um, chronic lung disease, very chronic lung disease, that require medications. And these medications basically fortify their system so they're not able to get sick as often.
And some of them could be like chronic conditions that are less, that can be less serious, like asthma, can also be more severe. Where
Yes. But when you have a child that is going back and forth to the doctor's office or going a lot to the emergency room or hospitalized 4 and 5 times for asthma, then those are the type of children we see, and we're able to help the families give them their treatments.
it's got to be pretty scary for the families too, to see their child dealing with some type of severe condition that can be life threatening any particular day. Um, but you know, your contact with the parents is generally either when they bring the child, if they bring it, or when they put the child on the bus.
Correct.
Is there any way of following up with the parent, or do you have some type of situation where you're able to do that?
We're constantly following up with the families. If I see a child that is becoming ill, that has a fever, is not feeling well, I will speak to the family and have them come in and take the child to the doctor. And I follow up later on in the evening and say, is little Johnny okay? What's going on? What did the doctor say? Did they change any medicine? And the families are usually really good about either calling me or texting me back. I'm at the hospital now. And, if they do get admitted to the hospital, my whole team goes to the hospital to see them, which I think is a great thing. Because, the child knows us, especially those nonverbal children. They feel more comfortable at the hospital when they see us.
Yeah.
So those are the things that we're doing that are different.
Are any of the children that are your regular patients, are they facing disease that includes, you said they're nonverbal, but how about children that are blind or can't hear, or
Children that are visually impaired, normally what happens is we get in touch with Lighthouse for the Blind, and they come in and they do the therapy services on children who are blind.
so they come into your location and do so you do work with other
Yes.
areas, so tell me a little bit about Lighthouse for the Blind. Then it's a service for the visually impaired, and they come to wherever the child is, whether the child is at home or at a facility such as Advanced Care Pediatrics, and then they do what they need to do. What kind of stuff do they do?
They basically work one-on-one with the child, whether it's with special, like Braille books, special toys. Um, they they do about an hour session with the child, and they help the child understand their environment and where they're at in terms of perception if they're blind. So they do great work with the children from what I'm seeing.
Are there services like that for those who are hearing impaired?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And who's the organization that does that?
I'm not familiar off the top of my head of who does it here in the Treasure Coast, because I haven't had any.
You haven't had need
any
yet.
auditory kids.
Yeah.
I knew more of the organizations in Palm Beach. I'm still
Right.
learning the organizations in the Treasure Coast.
Yeah. So if you're a parent who's dealing with the type of situation, either temporarily or long term. So there is a solution for you. There's something, and for your child, for your family, because this sounds like it's a lot more fun for the child to be around other people as well.
Correct.
So basically, Advanced Care Pediatrics is PPAC that allows the family to, know that their loved one is well taken care of and is receiving the medication or the technology or the extra care that they need while they go to work. Is it something that's also available for families that don't work full time?
Yes, it's available for families that don't work full time, because a lot of these families are either trying to get back to school, learn a
Mm-hmm.
trade, or get a job in order to start working.
Yeah.
We have very transparent care. I always invite the mothers to come any time of the day, the grandmothers, to come and see the care that we're providing for these children. That's one of the hardest things for moms, is to leave their medically fragile child with someone that they just met, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So what I tell them is, you could come by whenever you want and see how your child is being cared for.
And especially if mom or grandma has done all of the care for the child's whole life, they're not used to handing it off to somebody else, and they want to feel like, it's somebody that they can trust. Do you have to deal with frequently critical situations where you have to call for assistance, like from the hospital, or is that something that happens
We
occasionally? Or
we are very well trained in order how to handle an emergency. We've handled emergencies. I have a very good staff that is highly qualified to handle emergencies. But if it's something that's not within our scope of practice, we do activate 911, and the paramedics come
and
to
so
the center.
yeah, so the same way that they would come and take
Yes.
care.
And we send a staff member to the hospital until the family arrives.
So the child is not alone.
Correct.
We've been talking to Alexandra Delgado. She is a nurse practitioner from Advanced Care Pediatrics, which is a PPAC in town, and they're located over at Darwin Square. And if you need more information, you can check them out on Facebook or on their website. Just look up Advanced Care Pediatrics. Alex, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
It's been very informative. Stay tuned for more. We're going to be talking about some children's services and activities coming up on the Treasure Coast. You're listening to the Sue Ellen Sanders Show, and we'll be back with more. Welcome back to the Sue Ellen Sanders Show, and we're glad you're here. There's an event that's going on this weekend on Sunday that I kind of feel a little bit close to. I feel like I've been involved with a little bit, in the way that I and over 100 other women in the community helped fund it through the organization called Impact 100 St. Lucie. And what Impact 100 is exactly is an organization of like-minded women who want to make an impact in the community by giving an organization $100,000. Originally, this wasn't, St. Lucie County isn't the first place that we've ever tried to do that. But as a matter of fact, there's an Impact 100 Martin County Chapter 2. some people were doubtful that women in St. Lucie County would be able to get together, 100 of us who each give $1,000 to be a part of the impact group. But within the first year, not only did we fund as a group one $100,000 grant, but there were also 2 additional runners-up for the grant process that received $10,000 each, and one of them was Inner Truth Project. So we're moving ahead from there. That $100,000 was given through a grant process. Nonprofit organizations were invited to apply at the beginning of the year in January and February to have their grant reviewed by a grant committee completely made up of volunteers, a part of Impact 100. And Impact 100 selected a certain amount of finalists to move on to the final grant making status, where they submitted a complete grant. So moving on to April, when the final selection of the Impact 100 St. Lucie grant endowment was made, and the organization that earned the $100,000 was actually Tykes and Teens. If you're familiar with Tykes and Teens, they provide much needed mental health services for children on the Treasure Coast. And they have been doing that for quite a while, but they are actually housed in Stewart. And although they have done some satellite programming, plenty of satellite programming coming up into St. Lucie County, if you were someone who wanted to use their outpatient counseling services for your child who is having some difficulty with mental health issues. And when I say this, mental health issues, that that covers a gamut of things. That could be just dealing with bullying, dealing with a situation where maybe there's a death in the family, or a change in the family, a divorce. You can never tell how something is going to affect some kids. So bottom line, Tykes and Teens provides those types of services at all different levels for children of all ages. As a matter of fact, the Early Learning Coalition contracts with Tykes and Teens for their toddler initiative and providing services to that age group. So Tykes and Teens decides that the whole idea of the Impact 100 project is supposed to be kind of pie in the sky, something that you would spend $100,000 on if you had a dream come true, if you had something that you could do. And a dream that Tykes and Teens has had for a while, or hoped to have, was to open a St. Lucie County office, because there's really a whole lot of people in St. Lucie County who have needs, and they are, I will admit, they are being met by Tykes and Teens, but sometimes it's not convenient, especially if you're a parent and you want to take your child for counseling to Tykes and Teens. A lot of times the school district and pediatricians might recommend them, but if you didn't have the time to go down to Stewart or down to Jensen to receive the services, then you just didn't follow up with the services. So anyhow, bottom line, this Sunday, if you're listening to this show this weekend, from 2 to 4 is the Tykes and Teens Empower Shower and Open House. I think this is so cute and really gets the message across that this is a community-wide effort, that this is something Tykes and Teens has come to St. Lucie. This is their open house, but they're also allowing us to be part of a shower. If you can't go to the shower, which is between 2 and 4 on Sunday, and that's at 451 Southwest Bethany Drive, Suite 101. So it's in the St. Lucie West area, in that industrial area. And you can look it up on Facebook, because it's called the Empower Shower and Open House. But if you can't go, there's a link where you could order stuff for their shower and provide some things that the kids who come to services at that new office are going to need to make that $100,000 that was the initial gift go even farther. So if you need more information about that, you could look that up on Facebook under Tykes and Teens Empower Shower and Open House. And that's coming up again Sunday, July 28th. That's this weekend between 2 and 4 p.m. You're listening to the Sue Ellen Sanders Show, and before I leave, I just want to add that if you have information that you'd like to communicate to St. Lucie County about services in the community or events or things that are of community nature that are for the public, you can contact me here at WPSL 1590 during the regular workday, Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. Thanks for listening today. We'll see you back here next weekend with more.